Well then, shall I introduce myself? I'm Shindo Makoto, 3rd grade. Nice to meet ya. Did you know that our school is jam-packed with clubs who are regulars at national meets? Baseball and soccer, judo and kendo, tennis and table tennis. Well, we are overflowing with talent after all. The player base is packed. And amongst all these clubs, there's one that stands out above all the rest for all the achievements they've received. Although now it's pretty much empty. Do you know what club that is? It's the boxing club. Boxing rocks. It's a sport for men. Women just don't get it. People who don't get it say that it's nothing more than a fight, but it's not that at all. No matter how hard you look, you'll never find a more gentlemanly sport than boxing. And our school's boxing club used to be amazing. They pretty much always made the national championships. Not only that, but they were the top of several classes. Amazing, right? But now, they suck. They're no good at all. There are barely any members left. The club is nothing more than a shell of what it used to be. Now it's nothing more than a ghost club, clinging to the glories of a time long past. But you know, there's a good reason for that. The scary story I'm about to tell you is about that boxing club. It wasn't that the boxing club was just strong, and it wasn't like everyone there was talented. When it comes to sports, guts are more important than talent. And the boxing club grew strong because that was what they trained. And it was grueling. It wasn't bullying. It was harsh training. Our boxing club had harsh training that was passed down through the generations. Do you know what that training was? 1,000 bunny hops. That's right, 1,000 bunny hops. It's a horrific training drill. Let me tell you how it was done. They made the 1st graders bunny hop around the school grounds. Bunny hopping is tough, right? There were numerous guys who'd fall to their knees before finishing a lap of the grounds. When that happened, the upper graders would scream at them like demons. What? You can't bunny hop? I'm kidding. My bad. And back to the story. This traditional training would take place at a training camp. They also called this the training camp from hell. They'd hole up in the mountains for 3 weeks during summer break. Of course, they trained like crazy before that as well. The OBs ran 3 laps from the school to the shrine and back. That alone was hell. There were lots of guys who just couldn't hack it. But compared to that training camp, it was heaven. At first, there were 40 new recruits. Half of those would drop out thanks to the tough training. Then, it was the summer training camp from hell. The 20 who survived were whittled down to just 5. Scary, right? But those 5 were tough. No matter what you said about them, those 5 survived the training camp from hell. Their guts were on another level. They held up the boxing club's tradition, and then they inherited it. So, do you want to know what happened at that training camp? I do. So, you want to know? I guess you like that sort of thing too, huh? Stories of brutality. Or do you just like hearing about other people's suffering? It doesn't matter. Alright then, let's go. They would wake up at 4 a.m, split wood, then train. Then get ready for breakfast. After eating, they would do wet training and running up the mountains. That was some tough shit, you know. Then it was time to get ready for lunch. The first graders had to prepare all the food. And if it tasted bad, they'd get their asses beat. Plus 300 push-ups. And that was just if the food tasted bad. It was torture. But that was just the beginning. They wouldn't call it the training camp from hell if that was all that went on. Afternoons were the real problem. In the afternoon, each first grader, one by one, would have a practice match with all of the older club members. 3 rounds each. There were 10 older students, and they were all good enough to appear in the national championships. Meaning, they had to take these guys on for a total of 30 rounds in a row. It was nothing but torture. It was only training in name, and to be honest, it was just bullying. Well, most guys couldn't hold out until the end anyway. Most would pass out before it was over. But even if they did, the others would just dump water on them and force them to stand again. Then they would continue. They were living punching bags. Sacks of flesh and blood, rather than sand. In a single day, their faces would get messed up so badly that they looked like monsters. The mountains were crawling with them. If worse came to worse and someone happened to climb the mountain and see them, no doubt about it, they'd think them real monsters. Anyway, back to the story. So anyway, this training, or torture, or bullying, whatever you want to call it, continued. By the 3rd day, most guys had fled. Quietly, during the night. In the end, only 5 were left. How many years ago was that now? I think it was 15 years ago. The training camp from hell took place that year like it always did. 23 first graders took part that year. They'd all heard the rumours. Most of them were scared, but there were others who were calm. They were confident that they would be okay. But they were also the ones who tended to be the first to run away. So, there was a first grader by the name of Akasaka Yosuke. If you had to say one way or the other, he wasn't the strongest guy around. But he loved boxing. He longed to be a powerful boxer. But at a glance, he looked like the type of kid who would get bullied a lot. Honestly, the older club members thought he would be the first to run. But contrary to his appearance, he had true guts. At the end of the day, he managed to hold out until the camp. But everyone believed he'd quit before the camp was over. And so, they targeted him on purpose. He became the target of their harsh training. To be honest, you can call it training or practice, but for the older club members, it was really just a way to let off steam. All that stuff about keeping up traditions and being a gentleman, it was all a show. It wasn't the reality at all. It was bullying, plain and simple. The training they forced on Akasaka was clearly different to that of the other first graders. They didn't stop, even if his face swelled red or he spat up blood. If he passed out, they'd scream at him that he didn't have any guts, that he wasn't training enough. Of course, the other first graders were subjected to harsh training as well. And so, many of them fled. One day, a bunch of them gathered to talk about their plans to escape. And they invited Akasaka as well. And what do you think he said? "Let's escape from here together." Of course, Akasaka was human as well. He was also fed up with the harsh training. He listened to them discuss matters quietly. Then he cast his eyes down, his decision apparently made, and agreed to run away with them. Of course he did. The boxing club's training just wasn't normal. But he was something else. He suggested that if they were going to run away anyway, then they should get revenge on the older members first. This is what he suggested. He proposed they put some sleeping drugs in their dinner, and then, while they were unable to move, they would tie them up. Then, they'd pay them back for all the pain they'd inflicted, using them as human punching bags, messing them up real good, before making their escape. Everyone looked at Akasaka in surprise, but he didn't show a hint of hesitation or indecision. For guys like him who were usually so quiet and calm, seeing something like that was terrifying. Of course, everyone was against his idea. They felt bad enough just running away, and none of them wanted to get involved in anything like that. But Akasaka was different. He was insistent on going through with the stupid idea. Then, finally, he said that he would let the older club members know that they were planning to run away, unless they helped him. And so, there was nothing they could do. Everyone reluctantly agreed to go along with his plan. In the end, it was decided to drug their dinner that night. Of course, only for the older club members. And they ate their drugged soup like it was the most delicious thing ever. Then, the boys carried out their plan. First, Akasaka checked that they were all unconscious, then punched them hard in the guts. Perhaps that was the sign. The others started punching and kicking them too, as if they were trying to forget all their troubles. Even those who were at first afraid soon got in on the act. Their faces swelled and turned blue, and blood dripped from their noses as they got beat. And as all that was going on, something terrible happened. One of the older club members started foaming at the mouth, then stopped moving entirely. "Oi, Akasaka, this guy might be dead." By the time someone noticed, it was already too late. He's dead! Hey you sure went to town on him, didn't you? This is no joke, man. You're the one who messed him up. Everyone started blaming each other. But that wouldn't solve anything. In the end, they all agreed to hide what really happened. How? They were all going to pretend to be victims as well. Meaning, they would have to disguise themselves. The story they went with was that they were drugged and beat up, just like the older members. They beat each other up, then laid down on the ground with the other guys to wait for someone to find them. And that someone showed up the next morning. One of the former club members who showed up to give the cute newbies some harsh training, yet he found everyone passed out in the dining hall. What the hell happened here? Of course, he was shocked. The top class, badass members of the boxing club were all lying on the floor, their asses beat. "Someone call the police!" "No, an ambulance!" Apparently, there was a big uproar. In the end, they found the drugs in the leftover food and they figured it was done by someone with a grudge against the boxing team. Someone who abandoned the club, unable to hack it any longer. Someone from a rival team who kept losing to them. There was no end to the list of people who might have had it out for them. It all played out exactly as Akasaka had planned it. What's wrong, Kurata? What's with the horrified face? Does it bother you that much that their plan wasn't uncovered? Do you think they should have been punished? You sure are impatient. Keep listening until the end. When compared to the beating the older club members got, the others got off comparatively light. They were faking it, after all. But the second and third graders were so bad that they couldn't move. Ironically, Akasaka and the other first graders were the ones who had to take over. And surprisingly, Akasaka built up a great track record. It was like something inside him changed with that incident. Like he realized how good it felt to beat someone else up. He always had the guts, so the makings of it were no doubt already in him. Then 1 year passed. They all became second graders. Now it was their turn to train the first graders. And those first graders really were an unlucky lot. Because Akasaka's training was even worse than usual. There were only 10 new guys left by the end of the first semester. Then the annual training camp began. Although they couldn't speak of it out loud, the guys who had been involved in the incident a year prior couldn't hide their uneasiness. Akasaka was the same. I think they honestly didn't want to take part in the training camp. But they had to, you know? If one of them said that he wasn't going to go, then all of them would up and quit as well. At the end of the day, they were all accomplices. And so, Akasaka and the others went all out on the training. Even if someone passed out, they wouldn't let up. And one by one, the new club members fled. In their minds, pushing the new guys to their limits was the only way to get rid of their never-ending unease. Then, one day, right around dinner time, one of the first graders on cooking duty muttered something. "Don't worry, this miso soup isn't drugged," he said as he placed the bowl in front of Akasaka. Akasaka and the other second graders' faces turned paler by the minute, warping with fear. After that, the second graders couldn't eat a single thing. They thought that this time it was their turn to be on the other end of the revenge plot. Had someone realized the truth behind what happened 1 year earlier? Who could it have been? Him? He was looking at me funny before. Or was it him? No, that guy looks suspicious. I have no idea. The second graders couldn't stop thinking about it. They were frightened any time someone even approached them. Because they weren't eating in the harsh summer heat, they all got visibly thinner and thinner. Their skin sallow and burnt. Their eyes alone oddly sparkled. Have you ever seen a boxer as he's trying to cut weight? They have to give up not just food, but water as well. They looked just like that. Do you really think a growing body can hold out like that? They were pretty damn weak by the time the training camp ended. They were able to descend the mountain by themselves, but then they were immediately hospitalized. You see, they were punished in the end. But that wasn't the end of it. The day they all stopped eating. Apparently, There wasn't a single first grader left at the camp by that point. There hadn't been many to begin with, and they all left one after the other. Every single first grader was gone before the first week was even out. So, who on earth made their dinner that day? After all the first graders disappeared, who on earth were they continuing their harsh training with? Although they didn't die, they were in no shape to ever box again. Perhaps because of their pessimism, they all disappeared from the hospital without waiting to be discharged. All of the first graders had dropped out, and most of the third graders were still undergoing rehab. With the disappearance of all the second graders, the club was dissolved. And that's the reason for the boxing team's demise. Oh yeah, and there were rumours that the stick-thin ghost of one of the boxers was at the training camp too. They started right around the time Akasaka and the others disappeared. People claimed this ghost continued sparring in the ring, red like burnt iron, whilst groaning in pain. Leaning forward, exhausted, almost like he was apologising as he continued fighting. Some even said it looked like he was dancing, and others claimed they could hear the sound of a punching bag getting hit. I think there are lots of people who like visiting places like that, and it's thanks to them that there's no shortage of information. If it's something you're interested in, you should go check it out yourself as well. And that's the end of my story. Who's up next?